I call Ian Lees-Galloway.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. I would like to, first I would like to say that in my first contribution on this part, the first 5 minutes that I got, I spoke to my supplementary order paper number 235. And that's a very serious supplementary order paper. It is a serious amendment that regional councils want to see happen. And I think that the government members owe it to regional councils to get up and say what their position is. So, whether you're for it or against it, please let us know, please let local government know what your position is, what the position of the government is, and why. I think that is the very least that government members could actually undertake. But no, what we've had is Mr O'Connor taking a closure motion. It looked like Mr Sabin was quite keen to take one as well, without a single member of the government benches taking a single call on this bill. So that I think tells you exactly how ashamed they are of this legislation and the fact that they don't even want to get up and tell us about it. But actually, Mr Chair, I want to talk about my other supplementary order paper, number 234, which would restore the original purpose of this Act, because basically what the National Party is doing by changing the purpose of this Act is giving central government absolute control over what roading projects, sorry, slip of the tongue there, but it really does reflect what this government wants. Roads, 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 mega roads, not even, actually, it's not about roads, it's about mega highways, and that's it. But that's what this purpose does. And the word in particular that I think is really missing from the new purpose that would be restored if my amendment was adopted by the House is that word integrated. I think that is probably the most important word that is going to be missing from the Act now, is having an integrated transport system. Because actually I thought that some of the contributions from the National Party members in the second reading of this bill were a bit thick. To be honest, a bit thick. And I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to position opposition parties and trying to play politics here. But let's actually have a sensible, serious conversation about our transport needs. Because what David Bennett tried to say is that the opposition parties hate roads. Well, guess what, Mr Bennett? Under that government, under the National Party government, local roads up and down this country are being completely overlooked. There are roads in my electorate that need to be built and need to be maintained, and they will not be. The NZTA has turned down the funding. They have said no to the local councils because all the money is going to the roads of national significance. So I don't accept when National Party members get up and say that they are interested in roads and they're interested in economic development and they are interested in supporting the regions, when regional roads and local roads up and down New Zealand are falling apart and not being supported. Because this government doesn't care about an integrated transport system. It does not care about an integrated transport system, and it refuses to have a law that actually says that when funding decisions are made about transport, that the economic viability, the environmental viability and the social sustainability of infrastructure needs to be taken into account. Not even economic viability. Because, of course, we know that the only projects that this government supports, its monster motorways, aren't even economically viable, let alone their impact on the environment or their impact on local communities. And that's why this government does not want to support the idea of having an integrated transport system. Look, Mr Chair, any transport system needs roads. If you look at what a transport need and you look at the variety of solutions available, sometimes it will be a highway. Sometimes that will be the right response. Sometimes it will be a road, and I think of the Western Link Road that Mr Farfoy's electorate is not going to get, the Western Link Road that Mr Farfoy's electorate is not going to get. the roads in Palmerston North that would support the central distribution transport hub in Palmerston North that we are not going to get, the road that Andrew Little wants in Taranaki that Taranaki is not going to get under this government, because all they are interested in is the roads of national significance, not local roads, not regional roads, and certainly not, Mr. Chairman, certainly not rail or coastal shipping, Mr. Chair. Certainly not rail or coastal shipping, because sometimes those will be the answers as well. Sometimes if we think about the economic benefits, or we think about the social benefits, or we think about the safety of getting freight off roads and onto rail or onto coastal shipping, that will be the right answer. But what this bill does is it creates a situation where that will never be the answer. The analysis that the NZTA has to undertake will never come up with the answer that a railroad is the right answer, or greater use of coastal shipping is the right answer. And that is because the National Party wants to control the Land Transport Fund so that it can look after its mates. Its mates in the trucking industry, and its mates that want to make money out of public-private partnerships. Because the other thing that this bill does is it supports greater borrowing to pay for those unaffordable roads, and it supports uneconomic, ludicrous, economically mad public-private partnerships like the one at Transmission Gully. Let's look at Transmission Gully as an example of the foolishness of this government. Now, Labor actually supports building Transmission Gully. Labor supports building Transmission Gully. It's something that we would do. But we think it should cost $1 billion, not $3 billion. But the National Party wants it to cost $3 billion. They want to charge New Zealanders $2 billion more than is necessary to build Transmission Gully. Why? So they can do it by public-private partnership. There is no evidence. The government has not been able to produce a shred of evidence that building Transmission Gully by private-public partnership will be safer, more efficient, more effective, or most importantly, cheaper. They cannot demonstrate that. In fact, they're so nervous about this that when the Labor Party requested information under the Official Information Act, they gave us information, but they removed the public sector comparator. They removed the bit that says this is how much it would cost to build under the traditional procurement model. I wonder why that is. I wonder why they're not prepared to tell us that number. I bet anything you like that the reason is because the public sector comparator comes out much, much better than the public-private partnership. You don't even need to guess at this. You've just got to look at the NZTA's predictions for transport costs over the next 30 years, and they say that they put in a special line that accounted for building Transmission Gully by PPP, and that line showed that it was going to cost $2 billion more than building it under the traditional model. So the NZTA knows it. The government knows it. Why on earth they're doing, New Zealanders can only guess, but I'd like to offer one possibility, and that is that they like providing low-risk, high-return investment opportunities to their mates in the banking sector. That's what they've done with Mighty River Power, and that's what they're doing with the Transmission Gully PPP. This bill is all about National tightening its control over the land transport system so that it can look after its mates and cherry-pick projects for itself, not run a sensible analysis of each project and choose them on their merits. And David Bennett was going on about the Waikato Expressway and my position on that. I came to Hamilton, I spoke to people, and you know what I said? I said, we have to take a look at this, Mr. Bennett. We have to take a look at this, and we have to run a sensible economic analysis of the project. Now, if you don't like that, Mr. Bennett, if you don't like the idea of a sensible economic analysis being run on a transport project, that simply reveals that this government just wants to cherry-pick projects, whether or not they make sense, whether or not they are good for the taxpayer, whether or not they are good for local ratepayers, whether or not they are good for the environment, whether or not they are socially acceptable, whether they're socially the right thing to do. That this national government just doesn't believe in evidence and proper analysis. It just picks ideas out of the air and picks and chooses its own ideas. And that's what this bill is all about. Yeah, we had a system whereby the NZTA had to sit down and do a rigorous analysis of what projects should be supported. That's what Labor had to bring in after 10 years of National building road after road after road after road. Labor came in and said, we need an integrated transport system, and that's what we set up. But all this does is goes back to the old days, the fossilised view of the National Party of the 1950s motorways and sprawls.
Mike Saban.
Move the question be now put.
I call Jacinda Ardern.
I appreciate the ability to make